Greetings, families. Welcome back once again. I hope you are well. I hope your day is good. Thank you so much for clicking on this video. I know some of you have been waiting for this interview from Niger. Our president, General Abdourahmane Tiani, the walking encyclopedia, the history man, the current affairs man. Wow, my uncle, he knows a lot. His head, I don't know. I wish there would be more children born with this mentality, idea, knowledge, because knowledge is power. He doesn't look into iPad, phone, pad, everything is there. And I'm grateful to be documenting everything, even though a lot of people do not watch or listen. I'm hoping in future children will appreciate this. And I hope this channel will stand up to the time that people will get this history that our president is sharing with us. But I've made a note. He talks about the recent attack. He went into details, and you know the names already. He talks about ECOWAS once again because everything happening within these three countries concern ECOWAS and France and other countries. He also talk about agriculture. He talk about culture, our history. He went into details even before our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ was born. He talks about a lot. So families, please get time. Please, I keep begging you. It is important. Get time to listen to all of this. This is our history and share it as well. I know it's long, but I don't want to separate them because some will get lost. Please listen to our president and credit to Faso 7 RTN. I'll be back.
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On the occasion of the interview of the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland, we are joined this evening by the President of the Republic, Head of State, Army General Abdourahmane Tiani, for an interview to discuss some topics of great concern to our people. Mr. President, good evening, and thank you once again for agreeing to take part in this exercise, which consists of addressing your fellow citizens in a language of truth to provide answers to the pressing questions of the moment. Mr. President, to begin this interview, here is the first question. Mr. President of the Republic, on June 18th, the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey was attacked for the second consecutive time in the span of 6 months by a horde of terrorists. To this, we must add the repeated and coordinated attacks in the Tillaberi region, particularly in the localities of Kirtashi, Diaguru, Sai, Torodi, and Walame. What exactly is going on, and how do you explain this situation, Mr. President?
Hello, and thank you once again for this important opportunity to come together and discuss the concerns of the people of Niger. We are here to engage in a meaningful dialogue that ensures every voice is heard as we work collectively toward a better and more prosperous future for every citizen across the nation. It is truly a privilege to address these vital interests with you all today. To be absolutely precise, before I provide a direct answer to your specific question, I would once again like to take this solemn moment to extend my heartfelt congratulations to the incredibly resilient people of the Confederation, and most especially the brave and resilient people of Niger. Since the very moment of our arrival on the historic day of July 26, 2023, these citizens have not stopped their tireless fighting. They are fighting every single day for their inherent dignity. They are fighting with everything they have for their very survival. And they are fighting with an unyielding spirit for their absolute national sovereignty and independence. This ongoing and arduous struggle for progress is gradually yielding significant and tangible results, even though it faces incredibly fierce, systematic, and relentless adversity from a variety of powerful Western nations, most notably several prominent European countries that continue to exert pressure. Furthermore, we wish to extend our most profound and heartfelt gratitude to all the brave men and women serving in our defense and security forces for the countless, selfless, and incredibly varied sacrifices they have made every single day. Their unwavering commitment to protecting our nation and ensuring our public safety is truly commendable and deserves our highest respect. For all our brave and noble martyrs, whether they were serving in the military or as civilians, we offer our sincere prayers to Allah the Almighty to bestow His infinite mercy and grace upon them. For all of our brave and courageous wounded, we pray that the Almighty may grant them a very swift and complete recovery of health. Furthermore, I would like to express directly to the afflicted and resilient people of Niger that through our collective voice, they are receiving the absolutely unwavering, eternal, and constant support of the entire Republic during these trying times. You recently asked a very specific question regarding the security attack that took place on the 18th of this month at the Diori Hamani International Airport, which is located in Niamey. I would be happy to provide you with more details on that event. Actually, what I meant to say was June 18th. As you previously mentioned, we must not simply limit our entire focus and attention to the massive horde of soldiers, because the real core of the problem is not actually the vast and intimidating horde of mercenaries that we see standing right in front of us at this very moment, but rather something much deeper and more complex than that. The real issue is the sponsors, or rather the sponsors of these hordes of mercenaries who are deliberately bringing grief to the Sahel. They are the primary ones we absolutely need to carefully decode and fully understand first. And that is precisely why I keep asking you not to simply stop at the mere surface level appearance of things. You have to delve much deeper into the core to find out exactly what is being concealed and hidden away right underneath the surface. That is precisely what critical analysis entails, and it truly represents the fundamental spirit of deep analysis. In order to briefly yet thoroughly recall some specific facts or statements that were previously made, ensuring that what I am about to say and the individuals I am about to name leave absolutely no room for doubt or uncertainty, I would like to remind all Nigerians of the specific circumstances when we arrived on July 26, 2023. This was a pivotal moment involving the actions and the international stance of Emmanuel Macron, which requires our full attention and a clear understanding of the historical record as it unfolded during that significant period, during that pivotal time in our history. People will say, Emmanuel Macron again. But yes, Emmanuel Macron again, and always Emmanuel Macron. And with Emmanuel Macron, of course, France. He was traveling overseas, specifically in Guadeloupe. It was from Guadeloupe that he chaired a defense council on Niger. In their mindset, Niger was a colony, and Niger is still a French colony. The authorities have made a firm decision, siding with France and standing against the people of Niger, that we have exactly 1 week. Let me repeat that for you. We have only 1 single week to fully restore President Bazoum to his rightful position. If we fail to do so, a devastating lightning strike will surely fall upon us all without any further warning. But we saw on which side the lightning actually struck. Clearly not satisfied with the situation, they immediately activated their ECOWAS puppet regime. This organization, already by July 30th, which was barely 4 days after our necessary intervention, had also, in exactly the same vein, issued a formal order for the immediate restoration of what they call constitutional order. But one must ask, what kind of constitutional order is there, or can there ever truly be, in a territory that is still treated like a mere colony, since Niger was a colony until July 26, 2023? Regardless of whether they happen to like it or not, we have steadfastly maintained our original choice, because it is a highly responsible and carefully deliberate decision. And it is not up to a submissive ECOWAS, subservient to France, to dictate our choices regarding our sovereignty. During the same period, in August 2023, you remember the infamous Sylvain Ité, ambassador to Bazoum, not to the Republic of Niger, who had openly defied the Nigerian authorities. We were surprised by his attitude because we were naive. Because for him, Niger was simply an extension of France. So when you really think about it, there is absolutely nothing exceptional or surprising about the fact that he failed to recognize the significant change we made. He was simply following the specific course of action that had been strictly dictated to him by Emmanuel Macron and his immediate political entourage. Furthermore, looking back at the year 2023, specifically during the month of August, there were several intense and highly publicized debates taking place across France regarding these very issues. I want to make this reminder, and I do so because reminders are life-saving, and those who tend to doze off will wake up. There is a certain Vincent Cruzet, an intelligence agent, because he claimed to be a former agent, but in terms of service, there is no such thing as former. They are active until death. He made a very public and open appearance on a prominent French national television news channel to explicitly state that, given the undeniable fact that their military troops are currently in the process of withdrawing from Niger, this presents a strategic opportunity to organize and carry out various clandestine, subversive, and highly destabilizing operations, specifically directed against the nation of Niger. But it's not just Vincent Cruzet. Remember the famous general who said that in a month, in 2 years, in 10 years, they would be forced to cross the Mediterranean by force with weapons and together with other countries of the European Union or other European countries, because there are countries that are not part of the European Union but are active in these destabilization maneuvers. Consequently, they will be compelled by circumstances to cross the Mediterranean in an armed manner, utilizing military force to actively defend and safeguard their vital strategic interests. The word armed takes on its full meaning. They are not going to come diplomatically. And when we say crossing the Mediterranean in an armed way to restore lost privileges, it reminds us, and we must remember, of colonization. Colonization happened in 2 phases. A first phase with those they called explorers, but in military terms, they were merely scouts. Furthermore, the second phase consisted of using military force to massacre Africans across the continent. This was a widespread tragedy because colonization did not only affect Niger or the Sahel countries, it was a force that reshaped the entire African landscape. The Europeans systematically invaded and occupied our African states, brutally massacred our innocent populations, and ruthlessly plundered our natural resources freely for many centuries. So that is exactly what this specific military general was referring to in his statement. Yet another prominent political figure enters the scene who hails from the nation of France, which is exactly what we have come to expect in this particular situation naturally. You remember Thierry Le Breton, who openly stated, and I would like to quote him, I repeat, I quote him, and I've quoted him here once before, but it can never be quoted enough so that those who are still dozing off finally wake up. So, to put it quite simply, I shall quote the following. It is the sheer, undeniable stupidity of a certain individual named Emmanuel Macron that has finally and truly opened the eyes of the people across the continent of Africans. If France's remaining African colonies should ever happen to slip away from our firm grasp, and please take note that I specifically said colonies, and I most certainly did not say former colonies. If France's former colonies continue to slip away from its sphere of influence, the flow of immigration will inevitably change its direction. The children and grandchildren of those currently in Europe will begin to seek their livelihood and future prospects within the developing markets of Africa. Nations like Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso will be increasingly seen as revolutionary examples for the rest of the African continent to follow. A united Europe must stand firm and fight against this emerging vision of independence. The strategy is clear. At least one of these three putschists must be made to fall, which will force the others to reconsider their current path. We must remember the perspective that Africa has no real history of its own and that Africa simply cannot lead the modern world. End of quote. I am taking this precious time today because this profound quote alone is more than enough for any thoughtful mind that is truly endowed with deep wisdom, unwavering dignity, and a fierce sense of independence to fully understand that our collective struggle is only just beginning. It is vital to realize that this monumental struggle will be incredibly long, it will be exceptionally difficult, and it will undoubtedly be deeply painful for everyone involved as we move forward into the unknown future together. But it is a struggle between those who defend their dignity and those who simply defend their status as human beings, sacred human beings with rights. This is a fight for the recognition of our shared humanity, a commitment to justice that stands firm regardless of race, ensuring that every person is treated with the honor they deserve. I say it now and I shall repeat it again, because we regretfully observe that there are some of our fellow compatriots, and indeed some fellow Africans, who have unfortunately and quite sadly lost this vital spirit of dignity, this essential spirit of independence, and this fundamental spirit of true sovereignty. So it is a profound and enduring struggle for dignity, for sovereignty, for independence, and for the human being in its most fundamental and essential form, against the relentless and opposing force of will, the dark will to subjugate, to colonize, which is a will driven and underpinned by an insatiable and truly unparalleled sense of greed, the likes of which can be found nowhere else but in the West. People need to understand that this struggle will be long and difficult. This struggle is not just the struggle of Assimi Goïta, Ibrahim Traoré, or Tiani. This is a profound and enduring struggle of all the people across the entire African continent. It is not only a struggle of the peoples of the Sahel region, it is a deep-seated racial struggle that we are actively and courageously waging for the continued survival and future of our entire race. I have said it and I repeat it, this statement is full of meaning. But we do not stop there. In this context, we often refer to the statements of a variety of prominent French politicians and other influential figures, most notably Jean-Noël Barrot, the current Minister Delegate for Europe of Foreign Affairs. I would strongly encourage you to go and take a very close look at the official statements he made when he was invited to speak before the members of the French Senate back on April 9th, if I recall correctly, and then once again during his subsequent appearance on May 20th. You will fully comprehend exactly everything that you will need to understand. If you take the time to carefully listen to the words of Emmanuel Macron during his many frequent public appearances, including the most recent ones, specifically the second to last one that took place at the International Forum recently, you will notice a very consistent pattern in his rhetoric. I wouldn't want to repeat it because I'm not a parrot. This event was held in the nation of Kenya, in the city of Nairobi, to be more precise, where he stood up once again to lecture the African people, just as they have always done throughout history, and as they firmly believe it is their moral duty to do, simply because they see themselves as facing inferior beings whose social status and human rank have absolutely no importance in their eyes. But as one insightful Nigerian recently said, indeed, they certainly have the full right to do so, because it is the Africans themselves and the various African leaders who have collectively allowed this specific type of behavior, this unfortunate attitude of blatant condescension, to continuously persist and persist indefinitely towards the people of Africa. Emmanuel Macron, in his latest speech, has quite simply and pointedly reminded us all that we have absolutely no other alternative or choice but to remain the subservient slaves of the elite drawing rooms, just as we have always been. But Emmanuel Macron remembers his own purely accidental and unplanned presence in France actually does not go back for a period of more than 50 years. At the time when we were in France, he has thousands of years. We are, after all, complex human beings, even if they mistakenly believe that the trait of ingratitude simply cannot be transmitted to humans in any way. We were once ordinary human beings, long before the catastrophic climatic accident that ultimately led to the sudden appearance of the entire second race. Go read Cheikh Anta Diop or listen to Cheikh Anta Diop to convince yourself of it. Politicians are not the only ones. I mentioned General Lecointre without naming him, but I will speak of other, even more recent generals. I am specifically referring to the distinguished General Thierry Burkard, who previously served as the Chief of Staff of the French Armed Forces, and who was eventually succeeded in that high-ranking position by General Fabien Mandon. Consider General Pascal Iani, the spokesperson for the French Armed Forces, or perhaps the various heads of French intelligence services. Notably, we should mention Éric Danon, who was eventually replaced by Nicolas Lerner. Please excuse me if I didn't pronounce his name quite correctly, Pau, who is currently serving as the head of French intelligence, specifically the DGSE, which is the General Directorate for External Security. I urge you to carefully listen to their statements, listen closely to exactly what they say, and you will surely understand what I said at the very beginning and why I felt it was absolutely necessary to give all this extensive background information. This is so that when I say that the massive horde of those who came to the airport for the second time are actually paid mercenaries in the direct pay of France, but more generally in the pay of the European Union or Europe or the collective interests of the West more broadly, you will fully understand the gravity of the situation. And that too, it's not me who said it. Listen to the Belgian senator. I remember the RTN Director General aired a segment. Mark Botenga. Listen to him. You will understand how much Europe has contributed in terms of billions of euros to equip those who swarm, their mercenaries who swarm in the Sahel to wage war against us. Even the most incredibly naive and simple-minded individuals among us will surely understand that when you mobilize a massive force of 12,000 men on motorcycles to try to invade the nation of Mali, it is absolutely not the work of petty stolen cattle sellers, small-time stolen chicken sellers, or even local stolen rooster sellers, nor is it a few simple zakat collections that can possibly finance 12,000 men on motorcycles and many others in heavy pickup trucks. We have seen it with our own eyes, and the entire world is a witness to this dire situation. But despite this clear evidence, the world does absolutely nothing to intervene or stop it. We are going to act because our survival depends on it. So those who came to the airport are just puppets. It is very much like a situation where someone is pointing out the sun to you, but instead of looking up at the sky, you simply focus your entire gaze on the tip of his finger. To truly believe and accept the idea that those individuals who came to the airport are simply violent terrorists fighting for a cause is to be incredibly naive and profoundly misguided, And it shows that you completely fail to understand even a single part of what I have just mentioned to you. The airport was attacked a second time. The airport will be attacked because it is a matter of France's survival, and France will use all means, as Emmanuel Macron said, and I quote, that he will not leave power with his tail between his legs before departing. He will settle scores with the Niger coup leaders first and foremost. Then he will turn his attention toward those in the Sahel region, specifically Assimi Goïta and Ibrahim Traoré. That's what this is about. It was France that financed. We have evidence, and I will tell you. The assault on the airport during the night of January 28th to 29th, first of all. Then the one on June 18th, still in the same year, 2026. It was a brutal and calculated attack, the most recent one in a series of violent events during which they were strictly ordered to completely burn down the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey to the ground. And they were further instructed to shoot at any innocent passengers who might be present at the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey at that time. These attackers came mainly from the right bank of the river, that is to say, they originated from the vast and remote Gourma region. Unlike the conglomerate involved in the attack from the 28th to the 29th, which brought together mercenaries from JNEM, EIGS, Kurawa, and other former or ex-military personnel, the attack on June 18, 2026 was carried out by mercenaries specifically from the ranks of JNEM, which they call Nusra. And it was actually the French authorities who brought them all together, who meticulously trained them for the mission, and who gave very clear and specific instructions, as I previously mentioned, to completely, utterly, and totally destroy the entire Diori Hamani International Airport of the region. They were prepared to shoot at any and all passengers who might have been present at the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey during that time. These individuals mainly arrived from the right bank of the river, which is specifically known as the Gourma region, coming across the landscape to reach their destination. In stark contrast to the diverse conglomerate involved in the violent attack that took place between the 28th and the 29th, which was comprised of a wide array of mercenaries from GNIM, EIGS, Akura WA, and various other former or ex-military personnel. The specific attack that took place on June 18, 2026, was carried out exclusively by mercenaries drawn from the ranks of GNIM, a group which they themselves commonly refer to as Nusra. Furthermore, it was specifically the French authorities who gathered these individuals together, meticulously trained them for the task, and provided them with incredibly clear and precise instructions, just as I previously mentioned, with the ultimate goal to completely, utterly, and totally destroy the Diori Hamani International Airport located in the city of Niamey, ensuring the facility was rendered entirely unusable for any future operations. Following the successful completion of their intensive and rigorous training program, the first group of individuals began their long journey on the morning of Friday the 13th, while several others waited to depart on Saturday, and the remaining members of the team finally set out on their way during the quiet hours of Sunday. The attack was planned to be carried out simultaneously at 3 sites. The first site is the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey. The second site identified is the Grand Presidential Palace Complex and all of its various surrounding administrative annexes. And the third strategic site that was designated to be attacked is Tendubia, which serves as the primary training center as well as the specialized academy for officers training school. For this, they were provided with communication equipment by French intelligence. Every single one of the individual fighters had actually received two completely different types of mobile phones. There is a renowned and established brand they call Techno, specifically designed for those who are either passionate beginners or seasoned professionals working within this specialized industry. Techno 30, Spark 30. Furthermore, there is another very specific brand and model to consider, which is the IT 5606. I'm quite certain that all the experienced communication specialists watching this will immediately know exactly which particular brand I am talking about right now. They had received the order to carry out this attack on these three positions, the order to destroy. But we are not, as they say in the language, Kanwalacha. We stopped being the Kanwalacha they used to know because we have taken our destiny into our own hands. For them, that's their planning. But we also have our own planning. In direct response to this very specific and highly calculated strategic choice that we are currently following, a path which, of course, I absolutely cannot reveal to you at this moment for a variety of purely strategic and confidential reasons, we have carefully devised, as we always do, and as we know how to do exceptionally well through our years of experience, a comprehensive and powerful counterattack to address the situation. This decisive and well-coordinated counterattack successfully allowed our forces to intercept and apprehend the entire specialized commando unit that was originally supposed to carry out a devastating series of coordinated assaults on the Royal Palace grounds as well as the strategic Tendubia military training center located nearby. We apprehended them on June 16th and 17th.
So before the attack?
1 or 2 days before the attack. The other commando, whose hideout was found 1 kilometer east of the Diori Hamani International Airport. We now have full knowledge of the precise and detailed composition of that specific commando unit, and we are well aware of those individuals who managed to survive the initial attack. They did not survive because they were neutralized or arrested by our forces, but simply because they were the smartest and most cunning ones among them, orchestrating operations and giving orders from the safety of certain luxury residences located on the far outskirts of Niamey. These individuals had plenty of time to flee the scene the moment they realized their coordinated attack had ultimately failed. This outcome was, of course, much to the profound dismay and frustration of their high-level French sponsors, whose deep disappointment and bitterness were incredibly plain for everyone to see. So the June 18th attack was actually carried out by hired soldiers of fortune, who were in the direct pay of France. And this particular attack targeted a series of very specific and strategic military objectives. And that is exactly why I say it is absolutely crucial that we must always ask deeper questions in order to fully understand the complex underlying motives and what is truly at stake here. To understand the first major reason that ultimately led to this specific attack, you must remember the significant event where we successfully expelled at least 4,000 Western soldiers from our international airport, which was a move specifically directed at clearing out the Niamey air base once and for all. In order to achieve this specific objective, France wanted, through every possible method and strategy available, to demonstrate clearly that as long as they remain here present with us, we will be completely safe and protected. However, they also wanted to show that as long as they are no longer here with us, we will inevitably find ourselves in a state of constant, deep-seated insecurity and vulnerability. But we know that this perpetual state of deep-seated insecurity, or this constant sense of vulnerability, is deliberately and specifically designed to show Africans that the mighty French colonial overlord, the French God, is the only one truly capable of providing them with any form of protection. The second objective that they are aiming to achieve through this attack is to provide a more concrete and tangible structure to their ongoing informational warfare. This is a strategy which they had previously developed through, as you may recall, the specialized Sahel cell of the Élysée. This specific cell was one which they carefully designed, established, and set up back in August of 2024 to manage their regional influence. And I brought this specific point up for discussion because it was a certain Jean-Marie who was the primary individual responsible for overseeing the Sahel cell at the Élysée, and who had this strategic component focused on the complexities of informational warfare, where he explicitly stated that he would fully furnish and provide both the Élysée and the Quai d'Orsay with a comprehensive and powerful informational strike force. So, through this complex landscape of informational and psychological warfare, it has become increasingly necessary to demonstrate that the Sahel countries in particular, which are currently serving as the primary and most significant targets of France's coordinated attacks, are being systematically portrayed as fundamentally lacking the necessary capacity for self-governance and the right to true self-determination. Another reason. You know that Niger is a landlocked country. Niger does not have a port. So, the Diori Hamani International Airport in Niamey is a highly strategic transportation hub that acts as a vital gateway, connecting the nation of Niger to the rest of the world. This is because the specific transportation routes or strategic corridors that guide our essential supply convoys to the ports are either being systematically and deliberately targeted, and again, this is entirely intentional, or they are completely blocked and closed off. And right here as well, we fully understand the specific reasons that led us to make these difficult decisions or to uphold and implement these choices over time, and also to take advantage as human beings of the various benefits that these seemingly thoughtless actions have brought us. We must acknowledge that these steps were taken with a clear purpose in mind, ensuring that we continue to move forward while reflecting on the consequences of our past behaviors and the impact they have on our collective future. Those who know how to read between the lines will understand what I am talking about. So the attack on June 18th is not a surprise and should not be a surprise for Nigerians. This attack on June 18th is not the last because we are monitoring the situation. Since the objective has not yet been achieved, French intelligence is currently hard at work trying to carry out a third attack. I am saying it here and I repeat it, we are keeping a close eye on them. And for that, to succeed in this attack, Emmanuel Macron's France, which still calls us putschists, even though if there is a putschist in the world today, there is no one more so than Emmanuel Macron. It happens to me. It happens to Assimi Goïta. It happens to Ibrahim Traoré to sign decrees. But we also sign decrees because we are heads of state and presidents of our countries. Emmanuel Macron, ever since he has been in office, who doesn't remember Article 49.3, he has always signed ordinances using 49.3. He uses this specific constitutional power to ensure his policies are enacted without delay. Even the budget from the day before yesterday was passed using 49.3. So who is the real putschist? Ask yourself the question and give yourself the answer. So this same France will never give up. They never truly gave up their efforts in Vietnam. However, they were eventually forced to give up entirely by the incredible courage and the immense sacrifice of the Vietnamese people. It will be the same in Africa and the Sahel, of that I am sure. They will be forced to give up because we have made a choice to sacrifice ourselves for our states, for our countries, a choice to sacrifice ourselves for our confederation, and an irreversible choice that goes beyond ourselves. It is the solemn and collective decision of an entire nation of people, and no earthly force, no authority will ever be able to triumph over or suppress a truly determined people, a people who are fully prepared to stand and fight for their own honor and dignity. So, let no Nigerian citizen ever be traumatized or discouraged by the relentless media noise, aimed specifically at portraying us as a people who are entirely incapable of self-determination, fundamentally incapable of behaving as truly dignified and sovereign men, utterly incapable of leading our own independent states, and completely incapable of securing our sovereign states against external threats. We must remain steadfast in our resolve and reject these false narratives that seek to undermine our collective strength and our rightful place in the world. We know where the threat comes from. We know who is sponsoring the threat. And we know that those we are confronting, those we are unfortunately killing, are African brothers because they are not all from the Sahel region. There are others who come from distant places, but one way or another, it is Africans we are killing. And it is among Africans, unfortunately, that we are killing each other to the delight of colonial and neo-colonial powers. Unfortunately, and I regret it. So, to sum up, even if I haven't been very concise, I would say that the attack on Diori Hamani International Airport was carried out, as I said during the first attack, by Emmanuel Macron, who is the defender of Europe's interests. We see a Europe that has consistently and strategically aligned itself behind him and is now actively mobilizing hundreds of billions of euros to procure advanced military equipment and technology specifically suited for the Sahel region, and to carry out the systematic destruction of Sahelian peoples, simply to safeguard and maintain their own strategic and economic interests. It's not me saying this. I strongly encourage you to go back and listen once again to the powerful intervention made just last month, specifically on the 12th, by a prominent Belgian senator. He is truly one of the last remaining clear-minded and courageous people in Europe today. During his speech, he explained that after hearing General Gomart's recent intervention, he suddenly realized the truth about the billions of euros he and his fellow citizens contribute. They are paying for weapons and sophisticated military equipment that are actually suited for the Sahel region, even though they are constantly being told by the authorities that this funding is necessary to wage a war against Russia. He discovers, through the clarity of Gomart's intervention, the shocking real destination of these billions of euros. These are funds being systematically taken away from their own national hospital budgets. And please remember, it is not just me saying this. They are being diverted from their hard-earned taxes and from their essential education funds, leaving their own public services in a state of neglect. Go ahead, listen again. It's not me saying this. So understand what needs to be understood. The rest is just commentary, and we are not here for commentary. That is the answer I would give to your question about what is happening. What has happened will happen again, because it is our choice that bothers them. It is our spirit of independence that bothers them, that disturbs them, that leads to these attacks you are witnessing in Niger, Mali, and Burkina.
All right. Mr. President, if you will allow me, since you have so clearly explained the reasons for these two attacks at the Diori Hamani International Airport, you pointed out that Niger has two outlets to the sea and the airport is strategic. So the question that keeps coming up among the public, after all these attacks, is whether there is currently a strategy to counter these attacks. Because after these two attacks, people have been questioning this military strategy, whether in Niger, Burkina Faso, or Mali, since these attacks are frequent and recurring. Is there today a military strategy in place to address this?
You certainly wouldn't be here right now asking me this specific question about your options. If there were no strategy, the Nigerians who are asking themselves this question wouldn't even be here to ask it. They wouldn't even have time to ask these questions because they would be slaves, subjugated to France. That's the truth. So asking this question is being ungrateful toward the defense and security forces who sacrifice themselves every day. I just said it. Apparently you're not listening to me. It's not those who bear arms that we are dealing with. It is the West that we are fighting against and standing up to. We are fighting against the West, which amasses all the wealth, manufactures all these weapons, and develops all these strategies of colonization and neo-colonization. So the fact that Africans, or more specifically Nigerians, are asking questions is precisely because there is this strategy that allows them to breathe and to ask questions. But these relentless attacks went on. Between the month of March in the year 2013 and the 24th of November in the year 2024, the nation of France has officially documented and recorded a total of more than 100 separate instances of terrorist attacks occurring within its borders. If there is a champion, a capital of terrorist attacks, it is indeed Paris. Have some memory? The nation of France, and especially the city of Paris, in a period of less than one single month, the city of Paris experienced more than 15 horrific and devastating terrorist attacks. I said in 1 month. Paris experienced more than 15 terrorist attacks. Remember, have some memory. The Republican March, where some heads of state came to show their support for Paris, for France, for great France, that is where we came from. It is from that spirit that we emerged. It happened in Paris. It did not happen in Niamey.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
On November 13th, 2015, when the city of Paris experienced 7 terrorist attacks in a single night. In one night. Remember, the French president was at the stadium. He was evacuated. That same night, they attacked the Bataclan. There were 91 people killed on the spot. Afterwards, the death toll rose to 135. In 30 minutes, Bataclan. Do you happen to remember that famous joke once made by the former American President Donald Trump when he said, "Well, I honestly won't repeat the exact words here in English, even though he originally said it in English." You see, in the United States, things are handled quite differently. They are not at all like they are in France, where you just go boom, and then immediately say next. Boom, and then you say next. The mayor of Paris filed a complaint against Donald Trump. Well, that's just for show.
That's right.
So remember, these are facts. We're not dealing with imagination. We're not making things up. We're talking about reality. We're not in the virtual world. So if there's a capital that has experienced so many attacks, it's definitely Paris. And Paris is not the capital of Niger. It's not the capital of Mali. It's not the capital of Burkina Faso. It's the capital of France. This is to tell you that no country is safe from terrorist attacks, especially for us who are facing a war of neo-colonization. It's not a war against terrorists, no. It's what they want you to believe. But when I say it's the entire European Union, it's all of Europe. It's the whole West that contributes, that takes part in raising funds to wage these wars in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. Do you honestly believe that I am standing here making these statements simply for the sake of hearing my own voice? Absolutely not. What I am presenting to you right now are undeniable, cold, hard facts. You must remember that it was actually less than 3 short weeks ago from today that these very same terrorists you are talking about, the ones we specifically refer to as mercenaries, had brazenly placed a substantial financial bounty on the head of Assimi Goïta, on the heads of Generals Ndao and Diallo, and yet another, Lassina, right there in Mali. But where does their money come from? We know. The money comes to them through a deposit that was made in Côte d'Ivoire between January the 28th and 29th. It was a cargo plane carrying funds which made a forced landing in a West African country I won't name, and it was transporting tens of billions. We know the exact amount. When the country where the cargo made its forced landing tried to find out what it was carrying, they said, "No, there is nothing." They said, "All right, since there is nothing, you will come with us and we will search the cargo." And that's when they said no, they couldn't allow them to search the cargo. They said, "We're not asking for your permission. We're going to search the cargo." And that's when they finally admitted that they were transporting funds. And these funds they were transporting were destined for a country they wanted to incriminate. So the authorities of the country where the plane made this forced landing said, "Well, you shouldn't have any objections." So they called the destination country to ask if they actually recognized a funds transfer. The country contacted said no. They said they weren't expecting any money from the BCO. That's when they changed the country and said, well, we're going to Côte d'Ivoire and Abidjan is our destination. So you have to listen. You need to get information so you don't just stop at the surface appearance. You have to scratch beneath the surface to find out what's hidden under that paint. And that's the tragedy. Our people tend to stop at the superficial. We see those who attack us or attack the Confederation. It's because they are superficial. For every single individual who still possesses a sense of self-respect and personal dignity, or a deep-seated spark of basic human compassion, they will find it impossible to stand in judgment or condemn us. They cannot condemn what we are doing. So that Nigerians are asking questions, I'm surprised, because this is the umpteenth time I've spoken out. I constantly tell myself that they have surely had more than enough information by now to form a solid opinion. And since they are complex human beings, they really should use the divine faculty that Allah, glorified and exalted be He, has placed deep within their minds to carefully analyze these events and, above all else, to truly think for themselves.
All right.
To put it more precisely and clearly, these types of cyber attacks will unfortunately continue to occur repeatedly in the future. It is only through our unwavering determination and our collective resolve to force the French and the Europeans to fundamentally shift their deep-seated perspectives towards Africans that we will finally be able to put a definitive end to these relentless attacks. This is exactly how other courageous peoples have succeeded across Asia and right next to us in the nation of Algeria. Do you honestly believe that the Algerian people just lay down and quietly waited for the mercy of the French to be granted to them? The Algerians fought. I'm surprised that people think freedom is gained by lying in bed. Freedom requires sacrifices, and sacrifices without limits. Sovereignty requires sacrifices, and those sacrifices are without limits. And it is these sacrifices that we are ready to make in order to think as free men. We will be able to act as free men, to engage with any other civilization as free men. We are the beginning. That's what many people don't know. Niger alone has more than 10,000 years of social organization. Tisilawen, that's in the Teneri today, 10,000 years. Archaeologists have recently discovered ancient settled villages that actively practiced various forms of agriculture.
Thank you so much, families, for listening up to this stage. The next one that you will listen to, I'll put a bit of music under it. I'll try and lower it. I know some of you do not like interview with music, but there is noise. Tick, 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 tick. So with the music, I think you'll be able to listen without giving up. It has a lot, tons of information concerning Benin, Niger. A lot of people are reacting on it, even though they don't know the detailed information of what is going on. You have to listen from our president's mouth. Again, he talks about ECOWAS, France, and talks about Togo as well, how Togo has helped them a lot. All these three countries, Togo has helped them and continue to help them. Well, apart from where the news is, the rest are managed to use different apps to translate it and move the noise. So it's only part that has music. The rest is good. So please kindly listen to the end and I'll be back.
Discovered the remains of ancient permanent settlements where early human populations practiced agriculture during the era when the Tenere region was a lush, humid, and fertile environment. So if we look back to the very beginning of time, even long before other races had ever appeared on the face of the earth, our own race already lived there and was highly organized. It is a historical fact that the very first king in the entire world, ruling nearly 4,000 years before the birth of Jesus Christ, was located in Africa and certainly not in France. To put this into perspective, do you happen to know exactly what year the very first French king actually began his reign? The total is 466. After Jesus Christ, not before. 466. And how old was he? He was 15 years old. Clovis Assé. He was the legendary king of the Salian Franks, a leader of great ambition who ascended to the throne when he was only 15 years old. It was this very man, at 20 years old, who would lead his armies to conquer by force all the small French principalities, uniting them to form the first great French kingdom that would change history forever. At that pivotal moment in ancient history, he was only 15 years old. He was originally born in the year 466. Once the Frankish kingdom was firmly and securely established, the great monarch Clovis I himself reigned with authority over his people from the year 481 until the year 511 after the birth of our Lord Jesus Christ. We are telling you about 4,000 years before Jesus Christ, when Africa had its first king. People shouldn't feel inferior. Read extensively and strive to educate yourselves. You will never have to feel inferior to any other person. We will never feel inferior to anyone else. This is the firm choice we have made because we know our long past, a truly glorious and magnificent past. And it is not just anyone, certainly not barefoot nobodies, who are going to alter the course of our history. It is a historical truth. Everything has been done to cover it up, but the truth cannot be disguised. As the old saying goes, no matter how fast a lie runs, the truth will always eventually catch up to it. No matter how fast a lie runs, the undeniable weight of historical truth will eventually catch up to it. So Nigerians should not doubt their own resolve or question their path in the face of the steadily increasing frequency of these violent attacks. Instead, Nigerians and the peoples of the Confederation should be seeking to ask the truly fundamental and right questions. Why exactly are these attacks multiplying at such a rate? And so, we must ask ourselves, what must we do to bring a final and lasting end to the relentless proliferation of these attacks, just as others who have walked this path before us have successfully done, especially the valiant efforts of the Vietnamese, and particularly the historic liberation of our Algerian brothers back in 1962.
Mr. President, perhaps we could change the subject. Mr. President, the visit of the newly elected president of Benin has sparked real hope among our fellow citizens for the reopening of the border between Benin and Niger, which has been closed for nearly 3 years. A joint committee was recently established to make a proposal aimed at reopening this border. This committee, which was given a 2-week deadline to work, has indeed submitted the conclusions of its work. How is this matter progressing? What is the current status of the reopening of this border?
Thank you. You are talking about the official reopening of the national border. When I initially provided the response to the very first question that you posed to me, I made it a point to state quite clearly that it was certainly not our side that made the decision to close this border. However, we have since taken the time to reflect deeply on the situation because when all is said and done, we are human beings who are naturally endowed with a strong sense of common sense, a fact that, at the very least, simply cannot be denied or taken away from us. We firmly believe that we possess this common sense, along with a fierce spirit of independence and a highly developed critical mind. Because of these inherent qualities, we realize that we must carefully draw the necessary consequences and logical conclusions from the specific actions and political maneuvers that ultimately led to the unfortunate and unilateral closure of the border that exists between these same people who share so much in common. On the other side, Malanville. On this side, Gaia. You will almost certainly recall the fact that following the famous and exceptionally significant and pivotal ECOWAS meeting held on July 30th, a formal resolution was officially reached and decided upon, and I have previously mentioned and highlighted it right here in this discussion, to immediately and completely shut down all of the ECOWAS international borders with the Republic of Niger. Of course, they could close certain international borders, but trying to close the border between Burkina Faso and Niger would be a complete and total fantasy, even though both countries are active founding members of the ECOWAS community. Attempting to effectively close the long and porous border between Mali and Niger would also be purely a matter of fantasy, even when we consider that both of these countries are official members of the ECOWAS regional organization. And there are various other nations whose authorities have demonstrated significant wisdom, and I will refrain from naming each of them individually. Otherwise, if you think about it, it would even be a sign, or I don't know, a sense of deep ingratitude, a feeling that is hard to ignore, because I don't need to name them. All Nigerians know who they are. So this significant and restrictive border closure, which was imposed by ECOWAS, allowed us to learn several vital and profound lessons and to realize that African states must finally, truly and firmly convince themselves that France and Europe will never bring them long-term happiness or stability. It has clearly shown us that we must look inward to our own resources and collective strength to build a future that serves our people first, rather than depending on external powers that do not always have our best interests at heart, ensuring our own path to prosperity. Even during their internal conflicts and disagreements, they maintain the clarity to distinguish and separate the complexities of politics from the realities of economics. They engage in constant conflict. Thousands of lives are lost in the process, but they consistently strive to safeguard their shared economic interests. For a highly relevant current example, we can look at the situation where Ukraine, which serves as a direct extension of the interests of the whole of Europe and the broader Western world, is currently and actively engaged in waging a significant proxy war against Russia on the global stage. However, even in the face of these many thousands of tragic deaths, powerful global economic interests are still being carefully preserved. France continues to discreetly send away its radioactive uranium residues, primarily because the era of obtaining cheap or entirely free uranium supplies is no longer a viable option for the nation's energy needs. They send them to Russia for reprocessing. Now, if there is a prominent and leading champion for maintaining this war, even though we fully understand the reasons why he does it, it's Emmanuel Macron. And who exactly is this man? The official head of state of the French Republic. Who is the French head of state? It's Emmanuel Macron. That would indeed be Emmanuel Macron. You are exactly right about that. And who is the most relentless in maintaining and keeping this war alive against Russia? It's Emmanuel Macron. So try to make sense of that. If you can recall from our earlier discussions, we had discovered a suspicious cargo ship that had been temporarily stopped at a major port in Germany, which was loaded with a substantial shipment of highly enriched uranium that had originated from within Russia and was heading toward a destination country located within Europe or the broader Western regions of the world. What exactly does that mean in this context? It fundamentally means that they possess the strategic intelligence and foresight required to clearly separate political agendas from economic realities. In stark contrast, our ECOWAS heads of state, acting as complete and utter puppets, as entirely finished puppets under foreign influence, seem completely unable to tell the difference between the political and economic spheres of governance. They lack the basic wisdom to make these crucial distinctions in order to spare their own citizens from a lifetime of completely unnecessary suffering and economic hardship. But we need to think. We need to ask questions and ask the right questions. So, for us, the reopening of the international border itself is not the most fundamental or significant act in this process. We must ask ourselves what kind of lasting and sustainable foundation we should be laying right now, so that once the border is finally open, it becomes a border that truly serves the needs of the common people and not just a tool for a single powerful individual. That's the difference. Because when the border truly is in the hands of the people, A mere puppet of a leader cannot simply stand up and arbitrarily declare, close it. The local people will strongly oppose such a sudden closure. And these are the comprehensive sets of measures we want to put in place so that at any point in the foreseeable future, whether it is a Nigerian president or a Beninese president, absolutely no one can just stand up on a whim and say, I want you to close this border for me immediately. Because when he publicly makes this official announcement, he will be forced to confront the entire community of Dandi people who have actively mobilized themselves to strongly oppose the permanent closure of this vital border. And that is precisely why we established a dedicated committee that thought deeply about the situation and presented a detailed set of formal proposals to us, all while carefully following the established framework. And that is precisely the reason why we welcomed, with a profound and deep awareness of the truly enormous and complex challenges that the new Beninese president will inevitably face, His Excellency President Ouattara. That is exactly why we welcomed him so warmly to the nation of Niger, in order to clearly demonstrate to the world that the enduring bond between our peoples is always placed far above the temporary bond between individual heads of state. It is precisely for these fundamental reasons that we are working with great diligence and commitment to ensure that once this vital border is finally opened to the public, no single individual, no matter how much influence he thinks he possesses, will ever have the power to unilaterally shut it down again based on a mere personal whim or a sudden arbitrary decision. I think that you will definitely agree with me. A very significant amount of water has passed under the bridge since then. There are deep scars and there are painful wounds that will certainly need to be carefully dressed and given the proper medical treatment they require. We must address these issues thoroughly before making the monumental and irreversible decision to fully open the international borders once again. Both parties involved have clearly shown a strong willingness and a deep commitment to moving forward, but there are certain essential prerequisites that must be addressed first. And as for these specific prerequisites, it is now up to President Talon of Benin and myself to work together to give them true meaning and to provide a comprehensive answer, so that the border between our two nations can finally be definitively, securely, and irreversibly open for the benefit of all our citizens and the entire region.
All right. So for now, Mr. President, there is no specific date for the opening of this border.
I told you there are prerequisites.
All right.
Absolutely everything we undertake is done only after deeply thoughtful and extremely careful consideration, ensuring with total certainty that the sovereign interests and the long-term well-being of Niger will be fully preserved. In the very same vein, we are committed to ensuring that the vital interests of Benin will never be overlooked or neglected, making sure that our vital and historic international border will no longer be subject to the unpredictable whims or the sudden mood swings of specific individuals. Instead, we envision a frontier that belongs truly to the same community, a deeply interconnected and brotherly people who have been united by ancestral bonds and a common cultural heritage for thousands of years of shared history, stretching back through the long and storied annals of our collective past. That is the sincere and detailed answer I will provide to this question, and it is my hope that the citizens and the people of the Republic of Niger will fully understand and appreciate what I am saying now or what I have just said, as well as the good people of the neighboring nation of Benin. We fully understand and deeply appreciate the strong desire felt on both sides of the aisle to see the border reopened immediately without further delay. But I say it now and I repeat it once more. That is precisely the goal we are working towards every single day. And we take this wonderful opportunity to warmly congratulate His Excellency President Ouattara, who has courageously taken this truly historic and monumental first step toward a new era of cooperation. The moment is truly historic because, as you well know, it stands in stark contrast to his predecessor, who was widely known for his relentless determination to simply destroy the nation of Niger. We should probably move on now, as there is really no need to rub salt in the wound by dwelling on those dark times. Let us strengthen and consolidate what the two dedicated and hard-working committees have successfully achieved through their efforts and ensure that this opening becomes a permanent and completely irreversible reality.
Mr. President, the National Council for the Safeguard of the Homeland is now 3 years old. Since then, Niger has been firmly dedicated to a process of rebuilding the country. What exactly is the status of these reconstruction projects? What has fundamentally worked over these 3 years and what still remains to be done?
But every single thing has worked exactly as intended. What has not fundamentally worked for a people who were only given a mere 2-week window? And now you're asking me questions about 3 years. 3 long years of constant struggle and 3 years of relentless fighting. But even just saying those words, 3 years, I can truly understand the weight of it. 3 long years of struggle and 3 years of relentless fighting. But to say 3 years, that's an exaggeration. That's forgetting, and that's exactly what we don't want Nigerians to do. Forgetting. The act of forgetting utterly paralyzes the boundless potential of the creative mind. The act of forgetting completely paralyzes the very essence of our human dignity. The act of forgetting paralyzes the innate human will to finally break free from our chains. Remember, I said it on July 26th when we arrived, 2023. But ECOWAS put us under embargo for nearly a year. Nothing was coming into Niger. Wisdom. On this specific occasion, I would like to take a moment to formally share a significant quotation from the current president of the Togolese Council, His Excellency Faure Esozimna Gnasingbe Eyadema. This was primarily because he possessed the profound wisdom and foresight to explicitly state and argue that the implementation of a trade embargo should certainly not be considered the very first step in this complex diplomatic process. Imposing a formal trade embargo or international sanctions should always be considered as the absolute final resort, to be used only when all other diplomatic solutions, peaceful negotiations, or potential strategic alternatives have completely failed to work, or it is clear that they will fail to achieve any results. He is the sole individual who possessed this profound wisdom. Apart from him, I challenge you to name one single West African president who was not stiffly standing at full attention, obediently following Macron's direct orders even before the official renewal of the embargo against Niger. It was Emmanuel Macron, speaking from Belgium, who formally declared that the strict economic embargo against Niger would not be lifted. And indeed, we saw it very clearly and explicitly when the African heads of state gathered for their high-profile diplomatic show. Despite the meetings, the decision was made that the embargo was to be fully maintained and kept in place. So, we know where the embargo came from. This initiative certainly did not come from ECOWAS. The persistent habit of asking these repetitive questions while completely failing to take into account the truly tremendous and significant progress we have achieved in total isolation is nothing less than an attempt to trample on the profound and heroic sacrifices made by the Nigerian people during these difficult times. What we have successfully accomplished together, first and foremost, is keeping this great country standing firm and proud, despite the cynical doomsayers and critics who loudly claimed that we would not last even 2 weeks against all odds. From the 26th of July, the year 2023, to today, it's been exactly 3 years. For 3 long years now, we have been breathing freely. For 3 full years, we have been defending ourselves with honor. For 3 years, we have been independently choosing our own political direction. For 3 years, we have been carefully selecting our international partners. And for 3 years, we have been deciding exactly what can be most useful for the Nigerian people. Just that alone represents a level of progress that cannot be fully appreciated by everyone. You must remember, it is the very same Niger where these same individuals are still asking the exact same questions that you have just repeated here today. Ever since the moment we first crossed paths with the unfortunate forces of France back in the 19th century, it is this very same nation of Niger, a land that has endured endless humiliation, a land which has suffered through a long and painful martyrdom, and a land which has been forced to witness the systematic and relentless plundering of every single one of its precious natural resources for far too many generations. It is this very same nation of Niger that you are specifically asking about today. Exactly what have we managed to achieve since July 26th, 2023? It is this same Niger, if we simply take a look at the year 2022, for example. And I will not even begin to mention the systematic plundering of our uranium and various other natural resources. It is in this very same nation of Niger where French military forces, reacting to the minor incident of a broken side mirror on a heavy tank transporter truck in the town of Terra, opened fire directly on the local Nigerian citizens who were gathered there. Who stood up to say no? No one. Yet it is this same Niger today. Today, would a citizen of France dare to come and shoot at a Nigerian and escape the consequences? And you're telling me there's been no progress, no change? It is the very same Niger. Just outside the town of Ayoru, an elderly man was tragically run over by a heavy truck from a passing French military convoy. Despite the accident, the entire convoy simply didn't stop to help him. It continued on to Niamey. The convoy was coming from Tabrebre. It was a Nigerian who was run over. Even if it had only been a simple goat, the entire motor convoy should have come to a complete halt to inquire about who owned the animal and discuss proper compensation. But in this case, it was a human being who was run over, an old man who was well over 70 years of age. The military convoy did not come to a stop. Yet it is this same nation of Niger, however, that has simply not been the same since the events of July 26th, 2023. It is this very same Niger where, as I said before, there are currently more than 5,000 foreign soldiers stationed. It's that same Niger? Why didn't people ask themselves that question? And it's to this same Niger which has taken its destiny into its own hands since July 26, 2023, that people are now asking, what have we done? What exactly is it that we have achieved here? No, once again, even at the significant risk of repeating myself, I must say that asking these kinds of questions is nothing less than a direct attempt to trample on the immense sacrifices that have already been made. This applies not just to the brave men and women of the defense and security forces, but to all Nigerians as a whole, who have stood together in unity and resilience during these incredibly challenging times. We see it happening every single day of our lives. We witness the innocent people who are being brutally massacred in their sacred mosques, in their quiet villages, or out in the open fields. But these are proud Nigerians who have never asked for anything at all from France, and who have bravely stood up not only to provide for themselves and their families, but to do so with dignity, without ever having to beg for help from anyone else in this world. It is these Nigerians who have chosen their own fate, who are being massacred. And today, it is our brave defense and security forces who have taken the proactive initiative for our collective security and the defense of our sovereign national territory. It is not simply the French military forces who are here and who have even managed to convince a significant number of Nigerian citizens and even various high-ranking Nigerian officials within the country that without them Niger would be completely overrun by the advancing terrorist horde. And unfortunately, as soon as an African leader or head of state tries to break free from these chains, they quickly work to create the harsh conditions to undermine and eventually destroy him. They haven't been able to destroy us for 3 years. No liberation struggle can happen without loss, without sacrifice, of course. I just reminded you of the recent case of Algeria. Do you know how many millions the French massacred in Algeria? You're asking me about what we've done since July 26th. The work we have accomplished since July 26th has already been thoroughly discussed by the various ministers who have taken their turns, each in their own specific field and in their own sector. But I will mention just a few of the most significant and impactful major achievements, DARDs. The first achievement is the one that consisted of taking full charge of our own collective identity. One, of taking our destiny into our own hands in the field of defense, of convincing ourselves that the defense of the entire expanse of our sacred national territory is our primary responsibility. And we firmly understood that we could no longer simply wait for France to do it in our place. The French spent 13 years in Niger. Can you name me even a single individual French soldier who has died in the country of Niger for the sake of Niger? Just one. Boastful and arrogant manner lately, publicly claiming and suggesting that we didn't show any sincere compassion or sympathy for the 58 individuals who tragically lost their lives. But the 58 individuals who died that he is referring to, even in Mali, they did not actually die in combat. President Emmanuel Macron of France simply needs to present to us, the French people, the full truth regarding the 13 fallen soldiers. Those 13 individuals who were supposedly killed in the nation of Mali during that tragic crash or collision involving 2 military helicopters. We need to know exactly where did they die, because we know that Niger was present in Mali as a key part of the mission for the United Nations organization. Furthermore, it is important to note that the Nigerians were prominently among the various international troops who organized and carried out this extensive search and recovery mission. This incident happened in the remote Indelimane area. Indelimane is situated right between the regions of Menaka and Gao. The Nigerian forces were based in Menaka at the time. A mid-air collision occurred involving 2 heavily armed helicopters, which had many armed soldiers on board, along with various explosives. 3 o'clock in the morning, not one single resident reported hearing even the slightest hint of an explosion. The Nigerians conducted an entire week of very thorough searches in close cooperation with a French mission. Precisely because they knew what they had done was staged, they strictly refused to allow the Nigerians to be on the same site as them, only allowing them to examine the remains of the wreckage from a distance. Yes, it was indeed the wreckage that they were eventually shown. So, the people of the world need to carefully consider this situation. Emmanuel Macron can strut around and say that we owe a debt. We know that we do not owe any debt. They are facing the consequences of their own wrongdoing, and they will pay, God willing, for the results of their misconduct. As the influential leader Malcolm X once famously remarked, the chickens will always inevitably come home to roost, and we will truly feel a deep sense of sorrow for the French people on the specific day that those chickens finally come home to roost. So, looking specifically at the broad field of national defense, this is exactly what we have successfully achieved through our collective efforts. We should not carry a sense of guilt for anything at all. No French person has ever lost their life for Niger, and we would truly never wish for a French person to die for Niger, because the death of a French person for Niger would only serve to reveal our own incapacity. But we know that we are fully capable of dying for our country, just as all peoples have been capable of dying for their own beloved homeland. We are not like the French. We know history. In France, during the Second World War, 18 incredibly short days is all it really took for Germany to completely subdue the nation of France. Just 18 days, spanning from May 10th all the way to May 28th. A single, massive column of heavy armored vehicles moved through the dense Ardennes forest. By then, the Germans were already in the heart of Paris. 18 days. We, on the other hand, have been fighting the West for 3 years, and we are still standing, and we will remain standing, God willing. So, that is precisely what we have successfully managed to achieve, to stand tall with pride, but not just to be mere extras. No, we are standing tall as a truly dignified man, a deeply responsible man, and a completely independent man who always decides for himself, by himself, and on his own terms. That is exactly what we have managed to achieve in the vital fields of national defense and security. Turning now to the energy sector, ever since we first arrived, we have faced, as you will likely remember, the sudden and total cut of the only power line coming from Nigeria. It was the primary line coming directly from Nigeria. Yet it's a line that had a long history. I won't go back over that. However, in just a short span of 2 years, our team managed to install about 118 megawatts. Do you know our total capacity? It's 420 megawatts. Niger's needs are 420 megawatts. we successfully managed to install 118 megawatts of capacity. This represents a staggering quarter of our entire national capacity developed over the long span of 65 years since we first gained our independence. Furthermore, we have already successfully paid for an additional 100 megawatts of power. These are all fully financed through secured funding and are currently scheduled to be installed very soon. This will effectively bring the grand total of our completed and upcoming energy projects, given that all the necessary funding is now firmly secured, to 218 megawatts. To put that into perspective, that is fully half of everything the country has managed to achieve in the 65 years since our independence began. We have already successfully completed the payment for an additional 100 megawatts of capacity, all of which is now fully financed and is expected to be installed and operational very soon. This significant expansion will bring the total cumulative cost and scale of our completed and upcoming projects, given that all necessary funding is now firmly secured, to a grand total of 218 megawatts of power. That's a full 50% of what the country has achieved in the 65 long years of its sovereign independence. And that, is it truly nothing? Can we really be convinced that it is a minor feat to achieve 50% of everything a country has managed to accomplish through various leaders and different regimes over a span of 65 years in just 2 years? It seems almost impossible to overlook the sheer scale of such progress given the decades of effort it is being compared to. And all of that, is it nothing? Even better, with the Sogdam project, which is now well underway and making significant progress, these 600 megawatts will be achieved through an initial pilot test or a comprehensive first pilot phase. This is just the beginning, because our ultimate long-term goal is to reach a massive capacity of 5,200 megawatts. Many Nigerians have cried out in disbelief, claiming that reaching such a high level of energy production is simply not possible for the nation. There is nothing that is impossible. And for us, absolutely nothing is beyond our people since July 26, 2023. Nothing is impossible and nothing will be impossible, God willing. When we look at the current state of the agricultural sector, specifically because of the strict economic embargo that has been imposed upon our nation, a standard 25-kilogram bag of rice that used to sell for 10,000 has, within the span of just one single week and without any clear reason, suddenly and inexplicably skyrocketed to 19,000. In Niamey, it was 17,000. In the interior of the country, it went up to 22,000 CFA francs. Take a country like Niger, a landlocked nation in West Africa that holds the largest reserve of fresh groundwater on the continent, which is a vital and precious resource hidden deep beneath its vast arid desert landscapes. It is the largest reservoir of fresh water found across the entire planet. A country with 1,267,000 square kilometers. Even the vast desert, which people often tell you is just a dry, arid place, but the desert only looks arid on the surface. But the water reserves beneath this seemingly parched and barren desert actually make it entirely possible to green this desert and enable production. We can see it. It's not a mere figment of the imagination. Rice from Tlemcen has come onto the market. We have decided with absolute resolve that never again in our history will an embargo be allowed to mean the same thing as famine for the people of Niger. An embargo will not be synonymous with price gouging in Niger. We are fully committed to a future where we are going to produce everything for ourselves and by our own hands. This is the exact vision that we have successfully shown and proven to the world through our extensive, large-scale irrigation initiatives. As of today, the progress is clear. Just yesterday, I personally saw the RTL News team going around the local markets to check prices. In the Gaia region, they found that a single large sack of maize now costs exactly 13,500 CFA francs. I repeat, 13,500. Honestly, how many decades has it been since we've seen a sack of maize at 13,500 francs on the market? And now, rice is 8,000 francs per bag on the market. I saw it. 8,000. It's in the markets, not in some huts where people might say, no, it's staged. It's the markets, the fairs if you prefer, for those who don't understand the word market. At these local open-air fairs, it is completely open, and it is the hard-working farmers who come to trade their fresh products. Prices range from 8,000, 9,000, or even 10,000 francs for a single 25-kilo bag of rice. Even the very highest quality rice available here doesn't ever go above 12,000. And that's in Niger, not anywhere else. Yet we thought it wasn't possible. But July 26, 2023 showed that it is possible. All it takes is for Nigerians to decide. They can do it. And that's what we've proven. Just these three very clear and specific examples should be more than enough to illustrate the point. As for all the remaining vast array of complex details, I certainly won't go back over them right now, because there are certain things where, when you see a mature human being who is widely considered to be reasonable, rational, and pragmatic, yet they are still asking these basic questions or expressing such deep doubt, you really have to start to deeply and seriously question the fundamental nature of things for yourself. Rather than simply accepting what you are told without any further thought. All right. So that's what we've managed to achieve in 3 years, among other things. As for the rest, people just have to refer to it. Regarding the specific interventions that you yourself personally supervised and managed with Abari and Yero, well, it is certainly no secret to anyone.
Regarding those interviews,
It wasn't hidden, I hope.
not hidden,
That was open
so open.
to the public and the Nigerian people.
Absolutely. A word, perhaps, since you followed all these interviews. Maybe we could get a bit of your thoughts on these various interviews we've had over more than 2 months, Mr. President.
It is not simply my own opinion that truly matters here. It is the opinion of the Nigerians. It is the genuine appreciation of the Nigerian people. It is the first time.
Yes.
It is truly remarkable when a transparent government comes out to clearly state its intentions. Here is exactly what we originally planned to do. Here is the comprehensive list of what we have successfully done and achieved so far. And here is the ambitious vision of what we are going to achieve in the future, simply because we have meticulously planned for it to be so. We are doing all of this with great dedication and purpose for the long-term benefit and prosperity of the Nigerian people. So it's up to the Nigerian people to judge. And I previously reminded you about the dedicated RTL team that travels extensively throughout the local markets or traditional fairs, for those who might not fully understand the word market. This team engages in direct conversations and asks specific questions directly to the everyday citizens. Of course, it is important to acknowledge that we simply can't say that life is completely perfect in Niger. There are challenges.
Yes.
We are fully aware that there are significant challenges ahead of us, but we remain confident that our progress is firmly on the right track. We are steadily moving forward on the correct path, despite the constant negativity of the doomsayers and despite the relentless, aggressive ferocity shown by Emmanuel Macron and his entire European entourage against the nation of Niger. It is crucial to understand that these actions are not just directed against me personally. Rather, they are actively harming the well-being and future of the entire Nigerian people. But let them be clearly informed that nothing we have endured will be forgotten. We have learned through this experience, and absolutely nothing will go unpunished in the end. We will respond blow for blow. God willing.
Mr. President, the rainy season is now underway throughout the country. What are your hopes and expectations for this current agricultural season? And what message would you like to share with our people?
I am keeping a close eye on the overall progress of this current season. However, looking well beyond just the progress of the season, I have already shared with you what we have successfully put into motion so that we are no longer dependent on the season or dependent solely on the arrival of the rainy season. Currently, we have approximately 15,000 farming villages spread across the region. Of these 15,000 farming villages, as of today, 95% have already now completely and successfully sown their crops. A good number of farmers have successfully finished up their first weeding and are already moving on to the second round of weeding for the season. In this region, there are several distinct types of crops currently at various stages of their growth cycles. As you have clearly seen for yourself, once again through the detailed on-the-ground footage provided by the RTL team, there are specific areas where the millet is already well into the heading stage or even the grain filling stage of its development. Which essentially means that in about 2 or 3 weeks at most, in those specific agricultural areas, the new millet will be harvested and will then begin to heavily flood the market. This is yet another compelling reason to encourage those who are currently holding on to their millet, waiting for hard times, to sell off last year's millet before it's finally too late. Because the new millet will be harvested, God willing, in 2 to 3 weeks. Those who selfishly stockpile their reserves, like some maliciously motivated Nigerians who try to amass great wealth, will end up weeping bitterly just like Emmanuel Macron. Overall, so this season is moving forward quite normally. At this moment, all of the various crops in our fields are developing quite well. We recently experienced a difficult 10-day break in the weather, but thank God the life-giving rain has finally returned to us, and it is even stronger and more consistent than it was before. Because of this blessing, we truly believe in our hearts that we will have a very successful and bountiful harvest this year, God willing. But we are expanding our scope beyond just relying on the seasonal harvest. We have now made a firm decision to focus our efforts on the cultivation of various crops grown using irrigation. Whether we are talking about staples like rice, corn, and wheat, or any other crop that can benefit from these methods. Our entire leadership organization has officially and formally reached the decision to undertake the development of at least 21,000 hectares of land across various regions throughout the entire duration of this carefully planned 5-year strategic program. We have successfully managed and were remarkably able, thank God, to achieve in just 2 short years truly enormous and impressive results that are now clearly visible and widely recognized across the entire market, both in terms of comprehensive rehabilitation and strategic, sustainable, and long-term development. All of these strategic efforts are specifically designed to complement and enhance the existing winter production cycles. To put it more briefly, the overall campaign is progressing exceptionally well and remains on track. In fact, 95% of the 15,000 farming villages across the region have already successfully sown their essential crops for the upcoming season. The crops are growing and developing beautifully, truly very well. And as I have mentioned before, in the next 2 or 3 weeks, the new millet harvest will be ready in several different regions, especially around Falmey and towards the area of Gaia. And we will certainly see it on the market very soon, God willing.
Mr. President, the second to last question of this interview. The AS Confederation celebrated its 2nd anniversary last July 6th. What assessment can be made of the progress of this confederation and what are the prospects for the future?
So, you said they celebrated which anniversary?
2 years, last July 6th.
It is our 2nd anniversary already. And can you believe it? As we mark this 2nd anniversary, we find ourselves facing significant challenges, having endured multiple attempts to destroy our resolve and to destabilize the foundations of everything we have built together. And I don't need to answer that question. We were staying in the city of Bamako from December 22nd until the 23rd in the year 2025. Everyone there followed along with great interest. For those who unfortunately didn't have the chance to be in Bamako with us, they clearly saw the impressive achievements of the Confederation. And all of that was accomplished in just 2 short years. We have endured 2 long years of immense challenges, 2 years of constant and relentless destabilization, and 2 full years of devastating war. This is the reality because that is often exactly what people fail to truly understand. We are currently at war and we are facing a formidable power that is Europe, a movement led directly by Emmanuel Macron. That is the fundamental truth that needs to be remembered. It is what must be truly and deeply remembered by everyone today. And despite all of those significant and complex challenges, we managed through the 3 Ds, national defense, international diplomacy, and global development, to successfully accomplish the goals that we have achieved together. The unified force is not a fantasy. There are 5,000 men whose main headquarters is located in Niamey. Can you tell me, where is the headquarters of ECOWAS? When we created this first phase, and I say this first phase because at the last meeting of the defense ministers of our three countries, we decided to increase this force to 18,000 men. But that doesn't mean that all 18,000 men are present. It's a matter of planning. In the coming years, we want to reach a total force of 18,000 dedicated men because we are fully aware of the unyielding and persistent relentlessness of the European Union, led by the French President Emmanuel Macron, and their very clear, openly demonstrated and calculated intention to forcefully bring our movement back into their established line of control. So, what we have established here is a truly unified force, supported by a fully functional and highly sophisticated operational headquarters. This structure was put to the ultimate test during the significant military operation that took place on April 25th. On that day, the nation of Mali was targeted and attacked by a massive force of 12,000 men, all of whom were heavily equipped and funded by the European Union and broader European interests, working in close coordination with their various Ukrainian puppets on the ground. Despite the intensity of that specific engagement, we successfully conducted our planned operations. It is important to remember that we are, above all else, dedicated specialists in the field of national defense and strategic security. We are specialists in absolute secrecy. People should not expect us to come out and say, well, we have planned, we are going to move on Gao, we are going to move on Sévaré, and we are going to move on Kidal. No, that is simply not how communication works. We are dealing with reality. We are not in the virtual world. We have succeeded in creating this unified force, which currently numbers 5,000 men, a total force of 5,000 military personnel, with the primary contributing nations being Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. That's something we've accomplished. Even though ECOWAS tried to respond by announcing 30,000 men, then they came back and said, well, we'll do 2,000 men. Then they came back again and said, well, now each country will designate 200 men, but they'll stay in their own country. All right. The comparison here is remarkably clear, I hope, to any objective and clear-minded person who is looking closely at the situation. We have successfully created the Confederation Bank to drive significant progress in the vital field of economic development. This institution is officially known as the Confederation Bank for Investment and Development. It's a reality. This was remarkably achieved in a mere 2 years, despite the immense and ongoing challenges posed by the war. The initial capital funds for this new banking institution came directly from the collective financial contributions provided by each individual state. That is the way the entire financial sector was successfully established and built. I will now let the Minister of Finance and National Economy provide you with a thorough and detailed explanation of the specifics. In the strategic field of international diplomacy, we have finally succeeded in speaking with a single, powerful, and unified voice in front of the major and influential powers that used to laugh behind our backs whenever we presented ourselves as a confederation. Today, they have completely ceased laughing behind our backs because they know that the Confederation is a firm reality. And that is a major diplomatic battle that was led by our 3 states to achieve this result. No individual member country in the Confederation will ever be singled out or unfairly targeted to be set against the interests of the other 2. All the people and citizens of the Confederation can be fully assured of this enduring promise. The shared vision of one people, one unified space, and one common destiny is solemnly upheld and protected by each of the 3 individual heads of state who lead the nations within the Grand Confederation. Owns a deeply held conviction for me. It is a conviction for His Excellency, the President Assimi Goïta, and it is a conviction for His Excellency, the President Ibrahim Traoré. And we want the citizens of our nations to be fully convinced of this fundamental truth. The relentless and pervasive information war will never miss even a single possible chance to constantly seek to divide us and break our spirit, but let them be completely and utterly mistaken in their assumptions. The Confederation they once knew, or the Sahel they once knew, is no longer the Sahel of today, is no longer the Sahel of the Confederation. And in light of this, our steadfast determination truly knows no bounds. So, in the complex field of international diplomacy, we speak with a unified voice and we carry out significant programs and large-scale projects in the diplomatic arena to effectively defend our shared interests on the international stage. Otherwise, how can we possibly begin to understand or justify the fact that the European Union is being treated as the guest of honor of the very highest rank at a major African Union summit, while at the same time there are numerous African nations and peoples who have literally made the history of this continent and yet find themselves being completely sidelined and ignored in these critical discussions, quite simply because the vast majority of the funding comes from the West. This is exactly what we must bring to a definitive and final conclusion. Let us commit to funding our own developmental projects and programs entirely by ourselves. And then we will truly be free. Only then can we say with pride that we are Africans and that we can come together in unified structures like the African Union or like ECOWAS. Otherwise, it is all just empty nonsense, mere smoke and deceptive mirrors. But we have finally stopped deceiving ourselves and engaging in the act of telling ourselves tall and unrealistic tales. So this is essentially what the Confederation has successfully managed to accomplish and achieve in just a few brief words. Boom. And this too has been frequently mentioned by the numerous different government ministers who have succeeded one another during the many interviews you have had as part of the government's ongoing process of public accountability and transparency. One united people, one shared space, and one common destiny.
As we bring this interview to a close, what final thoughts would you like to share with us today?
To bring this insightful interview to a formal conclusion, I would like to end by earnestly inviting all Nigerians to steadfastly maintain and continue doing exactly what we have done so incredibly well together. It is this collective spirit and unwavering determination that allowed us to hold on firmly for 3 long years, even when we were widely predicted by many outside observers to last for only 2 short weeks at the very most. Let us join together to pray for our beloved nation, for our region, and for the peace of all our neighbors. Let us dedicate our hard work to the betterment of our nation and to the development of our region. These challenges are not merely imaginary, they are entirely real. Mali was the target of a violent and brutal attack on April 25th. It has been reported that the attack was carried out with the direct complicity of several of Mali's neighboring African nations. And that is what we must fight against. They attacked Mali from 3 directions. One primary travel route originally started from the northern regions of Benin, then it traversed across the vast landscapes of our Gourma, and finally passed through the neighboring territory of Burkina Faso. 3 separate military columns were meant to unite their collective forces together and then launch a coordinated attack on either Gao or Sévaré. A secondary strategic route for the mission was also established, starting from the territory of Côte d'Ivoire. Deep within a specific part of the region, there is a dense forest where groups of specialized Ukrainians who have come specifically to train these mercenaries arrive in Côte d'Ivoire. They enter the country using official visas to visit Côte d'Ivoire, which they obtain from a particular sovereign nation located not far from Ukraine, a direct neighbor of Ukraine whose name I will not mention here, with the Republic of Côte d'Ivoire clearly marked as their primary and final intended destination for their mission. There is a dense and expansive forest called That is where every single one of these terrorists are rigorously trained and prepared in Côte d'Ivoire. That's the second route. And the third route came from Mauritania. That's what I said. And if you carefully examine every one of those specific locations I just mentioned across all of the different countries, you will definitely see that there are indeed French forces currently at work there. The French intelligence services are operating in the various countries I mentioned, and these French services, perhaps with or without the explicit knowledge of those relevant authorities, are actively organizing these hostile actions against our countries. Looking back at the events of April 25th, 2026, the series of 7 or 8 highly coordinated and simultaneous attacks that suddenly occurred across the nation of Mali were launched from these 3 distinct strategic directions. The French will tell you that they have left Côte d'Ivoire. But that's an illusion, as I said. At the 43rd DIMA, even as recently as March 30th, 2026, they trained specialized personnel there on how to use unmanned aerial drones. The kamikaze drones, the drones you see being actively deployed against our positions. And that is truly what I've been wanting to say to the brave people of the Confederation. The challenges are incredibly and truly overwhelming. The level of adversity is completely animalistic and utterly irrational. Emmanuel Macron has gone mad. Africans really need to understand this. France is no one's friend. De Gaulle said it, France has no friends, only interests. Listen to me, you little African. Do you honestly believe that things are different now just because you have become friends with the French? People really need to be rational about this situation. They truly need to remain clear-headed and objective. You must remember that before the attacks on Mali started, there was already a fully operational military training center located right next to Bingaville in Kaku. All individuals are simply required to go and personally verify the official register from April 15th to April 22nd. Regarding the equipment that left that training center, they will come back and provide us with a comprehensive and detailed answer. What did they make the Ivorian soldiers believe? That Burkina was going to attack them. They were put on alert. It was simply intended to cover up a maneuver, and that's what convinces me that the Ivorian authorities are fully aware of everything that was being plotted against Mali, against Niger, and against Burkina Faso. But we have further clear evidence of meetings and budgets amounting to millions of dollars. When the right moment arrives, if the opportunity arises, we will confront those who claim that what we are saying is nonsensical with the clear evidence we have. Currently, we are facing immense adversity and a constant, relentless pressure coming from the powers in Europe, which is quite consciously and deliberately supporting the administration of Emmanuel Macron. This is happening because Europe clearly sees what is unfolding on the ground and fully understands that what is behind all of these complex maneuvers is the influence of France itself, the primary force pulling the strings behind all of this. However, because their strategic interests happen to align perfectly, and since it is the African people who will ultimately be the ones massacred in the end, they simply do not care about the human cost. For these powerful entities, the entire situation is viewed as nothing more than a simple calculation of financial loss and profit. But we have said that it's over, and it is over. That is the important message I would like to convey and express to the people of Niger, and more broadly to every citizen of the Confederation. The ongoing struggle we are waging is a protracted and long-term battle. The immense and challenging adversity that we are currently facing in our daily lives will not simply fade away or disappear into the background anytime soon, nor will it change just because an individual who lacks a basic moral conscience suddenly becomes aware of the consequences. We need to be convinced of this so that we no longer allow ourselves to be manipulated. Because unfortunately, that's how it is. All these mercenaries they manipulate, it's pure manipulation. They make them believe they're waging jihad. But the big question remains, who are they going to teach jihad to? Is it here in Niger or all the way in France? In Niger, 99% are Muslims. In France, 2 to 3% of the population are Muslims. Exactly who should be the target of jihad? Where should jihad be carried out? Where there are 2 or 3% Muslims, or where there are 99% Muslims? Niger has been a home for Islam for over 1400 years. The Sixth Caliphate. If you go to France and wear the hijab because you are a Muslim, then we will see exactly where you end up. Even in your own room, if you wear the hijab, you'll be arrested. In Niger, where is it that you can't enter with a hijab? So this is just a distraction. If there is anyone who deserves jihad, it is not Niger, it is not Burkina Faso, and it is not Mali. So this whole story about jihad needs to stop. The very last true jihad was led by the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. But since that time, what kind of jihad has there really been? And especially when we know the morality of those who are supposed to carry out this jihad. Those who steal, who rape, who loot, who kill, and who burn everything in their wake. Is that what jihad is? No, this has to stop. This situation simply has to stop. You are actively defending the interests of Europe and especially those of France. Emmanuel Macron's France, the man who governs the country through Article 49.3. And you defend only its interests. The rest is just an illusion. You are not waging jihad. I am telling you, for the assault on the airport, they instruct their own fighters, say the name of Allah. Even if you die, you will go to paradise and you will not experience any physical pain. But they will suffer more than suffering itself, those very people. And their path leads them straight and directly to Jahannam, not to the paradise of Firdaus. So people need to wake up. Those who are being manipulated, think about it. You must realize that France is manipulating your country for its own interests. It has lost its access to free uranium in Niger. It has lost its access to free gold in Burkina. And it has lost both Mali's gold and Mali's lithium reserves. Furthermore, it has lost the historical submission of our nations and the privilege of humiliating us without us being able to say no. This is just like what they did during the Voulez-Chanoine mission when they entered precisely through Mali. We've been sharing suffering with Mali for a long time. The Bizinga, they were there on December 25th, 1898. Then they made their way to Sarba Hausa and then traveled to Sansani Hausa as their very first destination, arriving on the 3rd of January, 1899. And it was in that specific location where he was given the famous nickname of Sara Sara. That means to beat Voulez-Chanoine to death. Since Sansani Hausa, he forcibly took as hostages a total of 1,100 Nigerians, another 800 porters, and 300 women who were kept as sexual slaves. 300. That is the official figure that they provided themselves in their own records. From that point on, he did nothing but carry out the relentless and brutal massacre of innocent Nigerians until he was finally stopped by a group of brave riflemen. These soldiers were driven by a sudden moment of clarity and deep patriotism at Dankori. Specifically, the confrontation occurred 4 kilometers from Dankori, in the stretch of land situated in the rugged terrain between Dankori and Isoane. That's where he was arrested. And even then, it wasn't because of the Nigerians he had massacred. Along the entire route, more than 1,305 kilometers, he did nothing but massacre Nigerians. It was specifically on the 15th of July in the year 1899 that he killed Colonel Klobb, who had traveled there to relieve him of his command. Following this act, the riflemen, working alongside several French officers, first opened fire on Julien Chanoine on the 16th, and then they turned their weapons on Voulay Chanoine on the 17th. It was at that precise moment in history that the nation of France finally came to realize that the entire expedition had turned into a horrific tragedy. This very event is what they used to make all of us write about during our school dictations, referring to it solemnly as the tragedy of the Voulay Chanoine mission. And because of that, people think that what we have in our textbooks is our own history. It's not our history, it's the history of the French. And that's what we've decided to break away from. So, let us continue our earnest prayers, continue our solemn invocations, work tirelessly with all our strength, and make further sacrifices because we truly have no other choice left. If we want to remain free men in this land, there is simply no other way for us. It is the only way, the path to victory. And if it is God's will, with this victory, we will finally see the light at the end of the tunnel. God willing, those are the words I have for you, and I wish you a very happy new year, a successful agricultural season, and a happy anniversary from this place right here.
From the CNSP.
From Niger.
From Niger. From Niger, that's right. Thank you, really. Thank you, Mr. President, truly for this interview. And thank you as well for your honesty and frankness on such an occasion. Really, thank you very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, this marks the end of our interview with the President of the Republic, Head of State, General Abdourahmane Tiani, who has just spoken with us about the major current issues that concern our fellow citizens. The Head of State has reiterated his full determination to address the major concerns of the population. Have an excellent evening, everyone. Goodbye.
Okay with you. Thank you so much. Credit to our President, General Abdourahmane Tiani, my uncle. May God continue to bless you, strengthen you, give you long life. Your children, may God continue, our Almighty God, our ancestors bless you and your children and your grandchildren, your in future children will come and listen to all this. They will be proud of the three of you, what you have made, what you continue to do. We appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot. A lot. I appreciate you a lot. And I wish you all the best. That your aim will come to pass. Everything that you wish for your countries will come to pass by the Almighty God, by the power of our ancestors who do not give up on us, but fought for us to be who we are today. They will continue to guide the three of you throughout and protect you from the enemies. Amen. That's all I can say. Credit to RTN, if I will say that yet, Faso 7, RTB News. Families, there's more to this interview. There was question time. If you listen up to this end, I don't mind wasting another day or two to translate that one for you. But if you don't listen to what I'm saying now, it makes you drop off on the way. And I will keep my money and my time to myself. Thank you. God bless you all. My members, thank you so much. My VIPs, my kids and queens, thank you. If you are new here, thank you as well. My name is Mamle, by the way. Thank you for listening up to this stage. And I hope you got some answers from this interview. I hope you have taken one or two things from this interview. God bless you all. See you soon. Good day, good night, good morning, good afternoon to you all. Stay blessed. I'll be back.
Burkina makes the wake up call.